Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever, depending on where you're at. My name is Claudia Thompson, and I am the head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion panel for all of BNI US. So we're really excited to be with all of you here today. As usual, we have this DEI talk every second Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we have a really exciting topic. They all are close to my heart. But this is part of my heritage, so I'm really excited to talk about this today. And we have two amazing guests with us today. So first, I'm going to share. So we're going to be talking about. Okay, we could do that first. Thank you. The screen just jumped right away. All right, so I'm going to tell you first about our guests, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit about why we're here, and we're going to have great conversation with our panelists today. So Carlos is a loan advisor with Loan Depot. Which is the nation's 5th largest retail mortgage lender and the 2nd largest non-bank retail originator. Excuse me. Originally from Medellin, Colombia, Carlos has spent over 30 years in the United States and now lives in Medford, which is right next door to where I live. So I'm really excited about that. He has a wife and 2 children and spent the better part of the last 20 years involved in the real estate industry, which is fantastic, which is always booming here in Massachusetts. So really happy to have you here for that. And then through his time working as a real estate agent, a loan officer, and working in property management, Carlos has learned the ins and outs of the industry, which helps him to guide his clients and ensure the best results for them. And he's also the co-founder of the first Boston chapter of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, which is fantastic. And then he also provides community outreach education and network opportunities for the Hispanic community of Boston through that organization. And then in the future, Carlos plans to branch out and found an association for minority mortgages and real estate to help both professionals and home buyers in undervalued and underrepresented communities gain access to education and housing opportunities. So happy, Carlos, to have you here today. We're going to definitely dive into some of what you've shared, particularly around the housing opportunities for folks who are Black and brown, essentially. So I definitely want to talk to you about that. And next, we also have Crystal de Paz, and she is awesome too. She is great. She's not up here in where we are in Massachusetts, but she is down in the South Jersey area. So she's the founder of Illuminous Management. She started 3 years ago and spent most of her college years working for various small businesses. She is a military brat, right? Is that how they say it? Yes. So she is the daughter of 2 military veterans, so we thank them for their service. And she was both, they both served in wars abroad multiple times, so she knows what it's like to be very flexible and move around a lot. I had a lot of family, a lot of cousins who are military brats, so for sure. She speaks 3 languages, which is pretty incredible, and has been to 12 countries so far. And she has 3 amazing children who inspire her every day. And then a couple of facts here about her as well. She created processes for 7-figure companies, spearheaded the first human trafficking awareness event for multicultural organizations at the University of South Florida. She's been bungee jumping in Slovenia, which is fantastic. She auditioned for The Voice. So maybe if we're lucky, we get to hear a little bit about that. And then she's worked with overwhelmed, burnt out business owners who are trying to juggle it all, empowering business owners by reducing their workloads and creating an efficient, automated business that they can actually enjoy. She's truly passionate about what she does and the flexibility, freedom, and impact that she's had on females, Latin business owners in particular, which is fantastic. So thank you both for joining us here today. We are so excited. Like I said, I am, of Latin descent. A lot of times people, and I want to talk a little bit about colorism, and we don't have to get into that right now. But a lot of times people have an assumption of what it is to be Hispanic or Latina, and they assume that you look a certain way, right? There's like kind of a look, right? And Crystal, you and I talked about this as well. First of all, the fact that a lot of people might be confused about Hispanic or Latin, right? Or actually not confused. I think a lot of times people use them interchangeably. And even for myself, years later, we talk about this. It's actually, the 3 of us are of Latin descent specifically, because we are from Latin American countries, right? Whereas if you are Hispanic, technically it is from Spain. And so a lot of times, so when this was named as Hispanic Heritage Month, a lot of people I've seen, a lot of marketing, a lot of people representing as Latinx, right? Or Latin business, or Latin Heritage Month or Latinx, right? So first I want to tackle that piece of it. I'm curious to know, because for myself, I use the two interchangeably. I don't necessarily have I usually identify more as Latin than Hispanic, but if someone says, oh, you're Hispanic, like I don't bite their head off. But I know that some people, it does make a difference. So I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on that. So I'll start with Crystal and then I'll jump to Carlos.
Yeah, so I would say that for me personally, I don't really have a preference as far as which one. I do identify with being Latina, and if someone, refers as Hispanic as well, I, embrace both of them as recognizing the Latin and Spanish culture. So either of those are good with me.
Fantastic. Very cool. And Carlos, how about yourself?
Yeah, for me as well, that depends where I am. If I am in a particular organization that mentioned about Hispanics, I am part of the Hispanics. If I am with the Latino, I am Latino. So for me, it doesn't really make a big difference. I am very proud of where I'm coming from. I am very proud of my people and all those kind of things, my culture. So for me, it's very much, I am happy to carry a name anywhere. So it doesn't matter too much, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think, and it's interesting because Crystal, I know, I think it's very generational, right? Because this term of Latinx, right, has come out, and I feel like many other terms, right? Last month we talked about gender identity and pronouns, and this thing of non-binary was like not a thing. And so I think Latinx is very similar in that. I think it came out of the newer generations, and I think, I find it fascinating because some people, like older generations, my dad is real cool. He doesn't care, but some of my aunts and uncles are like, what is this? This Latinx thing, right? So I'm just curious. Well, Crystal, from your perspective, I'm just curious, is Latinx something that you identify with as well? And what are your thoughts on the term? Just curious.
So I would say, even for myself, it's a newer term, right? That I just kind of saw probably for the first time really coming out on social media. Right, is where I would see that term kind of come out. And I was very curious in the beginning, what is that, right? I normally just identify Latin, Latino, Latina, right? But I understand the concept of now, going along with the X, right, as far as not specifying Latina or Latino. So for me, I'm just open to it. I've never necessarily personally identified with it or used that term or anything like that, but I understand now what it is and why that term has come out.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, Carlos, if you have anything to add to that.
No, yeah, definitely. Something that is more important to the young generation. I had two boys, 20 and 22, and they definitely, when you mention about Latin, they identify more with that concept. So that's the new thing. I think it works perfect for them. That's how they very much embrace our culture. So I think for them it's very good. So for me, it's no issue, to be honest.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love that, Carlos. That's, because I think, again, like I said too, my dad is embrace it. There's always often changes, and I think around the fact that we're trying to stay away from gender norms, that is the case, right? And I know other cultures who very focus, even their words are very focused based on masculine or feminine terms. And so I think that's why the Latinx was kind of well, this kind of identifies truly everybody, true representation, so that no one feels left out. So then I embraced it, right? Because before I was like, this is a thing. And I know a lot of people of Latin descent that are whatever, this is kind of something that white people use. Which I also agree with. So, because to try to be politically correct or whatever, which is totally fine. But I do appreciate the inclusiveness of it, because it is something, and that it has been a term that is for everyone. So a little bit more. So just curious. So I'm going to ask Carlos, how long have you been a member of BNI? Which I know the answer.
Yeah, BNI for about 2 months. I have been trying to be in BNI for a while, but finally I make it about 2 months ago. And I have to say, it's one of the greatest experience being part of this small group of people that we know more every week. And so we share a lot of things. What we do with business. So short answer, yeah, 2 months, and I love it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's been more than 2 months. I feel like we launched you a couple months before that, but you are a brand new member and you're the vice president of your chapter, which is fantastic. And you are an incredible vice president, I will say, one of the best that I've seen. Yeah, with the chapter, the Bridge in Cambridge. So just out of curiosity, because I remember when I think I interviewed you, I think I actually had a conversation with you prior to joining, and you were really proud of, because then we did that Clubhouse talk. We just did some really cool things. You did some videos, and a lot of what I found about you, what I discovered as we were sort of, vetting you, was that you talked about not worrying about an accent, right? Not worrying about like having that. And of course, for those that don't know, Cambridge is right next to Boston. It's part, that's where Harvard is, that's where MIT is. It's a very progressive minded area. And so the chapter kind of is reflective of that, very open-minded, very diverse. And so I didn't see it as much of a problem there potentially, but you were so great about like, I have an accent, I embrace it, it's okay. And you were also like sending messages to other folks who might have an accent and feel like it hinders them. So can you talk a little bit about that in particular, anytime you're approaching something like a BNI or any other business opportunities? Because I really love your attitude about the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's very much, when it comes to the accent, it's an stereotype. Usually people tend to make an opinion of somebody in different ways, maybe because the color of the skin, is the way we look, the way we talk. One of those things is the accent. So we know there is discrimination in different ways because based on, let's say, color. There is also discrimination based on your accent. So I have been in jobs and opportunities, in meetings where people listen to me talking and they just create that concept of like, I am less. And so I learned that from early when I come here to this country 3 years ago, and I just embrace it. It doesn't bother me, to be honest with you. When I come here to this country, my first coach told me, you want to change things in life, you have to change your philosophy, the way you see things. And so the greatest value in team very much is not what you get, it's what you become. And for me, is why I have become in all these years. So when it comes to the accent, it just bothers me sometimes with people trying to minimize me. I have specific things that even happen in my own chapter, and those kind of conversations coming and trying to make fun of that. But I tell people, listen, just because you speak with an accent, it doesn't mean you think with an accent. So, and that's very common. So I just try to very much I understand my accent is strong. So usually what I try to do is how I can make sure people understand when I talk. Maybe I talk a little bit slow, maybe I can make some gestures, maybe I can slow down. And at the end, that makes me a better person, better communicator. So, but there are people that really go through life with the accent, and I see them losing jobs and losing opportunities because people create that image of them based on the accent. Not only me, but just a lot of different cultures as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I have a realtor actually in one of the chapters who, so it goes beyond accent, I think, as well, right? Because he had a Latin, he's Mexican. He had a last name that you can clearly know that he is of Latin descent, right? And he actually took his wife's name. I was hoping he could be part of the panel today, but he was unable to attend. But he actually took his wife's name, which is more of an American sounding name, because he was not finding success in real estate as a realtor. And that kind of broke me. I'm not gonna lie. That was really kind of hurtful, because you did speak to that at times that, of course, right? We're all human and have that, but like to be able to persevere despite of all of that. So rather than him trying to like stick with his name, he actually took his wife's name, which is totally awesome, I think, at the same time. But I mean, it's the reasons why he did it, I think I find sad. And so I'm curious to know, because since you are in real estate, you know, do you see that level of discrimination still? I mean, it sounds like just like the program that you had mentioned about helping people, you know, with housing, being able to get real housing and have an opportunity. I mean, do you still see that even today?
Yes, I do. I hear, especially, I mean, it is less than it was in the past. I think about when I come here 23 years ago, people just make fun of you and just in front of your face. So it was all this discrimination thing, but I think things getting much better right now. People understand, some people understand different cultures and embrace them. The real estate is the same. You talk to somebody on the phone and they immediately think you don't have the knowledge that you need to be in real estate. So that's very common, but that's part of what I am. So I definitely don't worry about it. I just trying to do my best and make sure I explain people what is the concept, what is the idea. And it doesn't bother me anymore. I even call my name in social media the accent man, because it's funny. It started with, I used to have a client. I was in the hotel business many years ago, and I doing such a great service for this client. And he comes all the time. He doesn't know my name. He asking, where is the man with an accent? So based on that, I just say, hey, let's play with this. I have an accent. It's okay. Absolutely, it makes me difference in front of other people. So why not just take the name, use it? And so right now, very much, it just only bothers me when somebody doing a sarcastic way. But yes, because some people don't understand, I always try to tell them, listen, if you don't understand, I can try and make sure I get my idea across and explain to you in a different way. But yeah, that happened. It's still happening, not as much as before, but it's the way we live.
Yeah, no, that is, it's good to know that it is slightly getting better. But I definitely, I mean, if you've read The Color of Law, which is a fantastic book of talking about redlining and the struggles that people have had, you know, it talks, I think, mostly about Black people, but definitely if someone had an ethnic sounding name, they were not shown certain areas, right? They were like brought to other places. They weren't given, you know, a mortgage at all. So I think what you're doing is fantastic, because I think representation matters. It feels, and someone might feel more comfortable and have more of an opportunity to get the best value for what they're looking for. So thank you so much for that, Carlos. I'm going to jump over to Crystal now. So Crystal, you are a coach, right? Specifically working with women. And, you know, I think the funny thing too is about coaching. I mean, first of all, how long have you been in BNI?
So I've been in BNI for 2 years now, 2.5 years.
Okay, fantastic. And you have had lots of conversations around that. You have some passion about creating some more diverse chapters in your community down there, and in South Jersey, which I know I used to hang down in the Camden area once upon a time, and so I think you know, did you see? I mean, what was your experience, right? Because I know I was literally there for Carlos's experience when he first joined. But what was your experience? You know, first attending the BNI, what was the demographic of your BNI? Like, just talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say, I mean, in general, the experience was really good. I love BNI. I love what it stands for. I'm a true believer in the power of referral, the power of giving, all of those things. So that aligns directly with my beliefs. And it's seen also in my BNI chapter and lots of BNI chapters. Just in general, though, as like a woman of, I guess, color, I would say, right away, almost every single time I walk into any type of business meeting, networking meeting, predominantly I'm walking into a room of mostly white males or white males and females, but most of the time it's men. So yeah, and that's one of the first things right away that's noticed. And I think it's noticed both ways. So it does get noticed the other way around as well. But for myself, I mean, I'm very confident in my ability and my skill set. And I know that, you know, I have a right to be in all of these places. And I, you know, show that through my work. So it's all been a very good experience, but it's definitely something that I've noticed in the various, organizations or events that I have gone to in general over my lifetime. And that's why it's a passion of mine, is similar to Carlos. I mean, I want to see empowerment in groups that also are helping and focusing on, minorities and women and mothers, and which kind of all fall into those minority categories. And I would love to see that. And that really motivates me whenever I get the opportunity to help anyone like that.
That's so awesome. Yes. So, I mean, it's good to know again that you had an experience, right? Because I think a lot of us, we see what BNI is and we latch on, right? And, similar to my experience, I've shared here many times before of joining, but I was going to be the third woman joining the group 18 years ago. And there was definitely nobody of color in my chapter, right? And I definitely, they were nice enough, but there was always something missing. It always felt like I couldn't really truly be myself, right? There was still something there. And always the question that all of us often ask is this going to work for us? And I think people of color often go there when we're like, this is cool and everything, but am I going to are you going to like refer me? Like, are you going to like bring me into your circle? Am I going to, is this going to make a difference for my business with this particular group? So it's good to hear that you're saying that you did have this experience, which is fantastic. So you're also coaching, right? Specifically, do you focus more on business coaching or is it life coaching?
Yeah, so what we do with Illuminous is going to strictly consulting and management with business owners.
Okay, great. So, which I knew this, but I wanted to spell it out. So, so having said that, do you find, based on your intersections and your identity, do you find that it's challenging sometimes with some of the referrals that you might get? Do you feel like you have to prove yourself more? Do you feel like you have to, that maybe you have to, show more credibility than somebody else might have to? Like, what is that like for you in the experience of the referrals you're receiving?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, kind of like you mentioned, when you come into a new group, for example, when I came into my BNI group, that was a group that had been together for a while. A lot of them already knew each other, had the existing relationships. So it did take a little bit of time to really kind of build up, I guess, the relationship or just the knowledge, probably more so the knowledge of what it was that I did. But thankfully, once people refer me to someone in their network, I pretty much just am able to talk to them. They're able to see the value, and I've been able to create good relationships that way.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And so I'm going to pivot a little bit from that. So that's really great that you were able to do that. And I know, like, just knowing you, once we finally talk to you, it's like, oh, like, and I feel like that's the way a lot of us are. It's like, just get to know me and I'll do my job. But like the trust enough just to even put me in front of people in your network. So having said that, so does everybody always assume that you are of Latin descent?
I would say it goes two ways. It's either, It depends. If they see my last name, 100%, they know that it's Spanish. If they don't see my last name, then I think a lot of people are confused and they don't know where to put me, or they maybe say I'm like European, like Italian specifically, I get a lot. So I think, it just depends on the interaction, but most of the time people are not so quick to try to identify where I'm from because they're not quite sure. When I was younger though, I would say a lot, I would just get Mexican, like no other Spanish exists in the world is how I felt at that time. And at that time, being younger, I mean, I kind of was offended at that time because it was as if no one recognized any other type of Spanish other than Mexican. Now, being older, maybe people just aren't as blunt to say what they think right away. But usually it's like are you, aren't you? They're not sure.
Yes. So what I'm getting at, which I think is colorism, right? That sometimes there's a way that people present. You can present as white, and which is very interesting, right? I think my son presents as Latin. He's biracial. He's the whole spectrum. He's a whole rainbow. And so he looks, I mean, if you and I are out together, they're going to think you're his mother over me. It's fine. I've gotten over it. I'm used to it. Right. And so, and I just saw a meme recently, since you are Puerto Rican, that there was one like, oh, they don't, them, I don't look Puerto Rican. And then it said, me, and then like Puerto Rico. And it was like every color, redheads, blonde, black, like every, and being Panamanian, it's the same. That there's my whole family, my dad is one of 10, and they literally are a rainbow. They're very fair with green eyes to darker. And so I think that a lot of people still get stuck on this of a way that you should look or be. And I think that's the beauty of our culture, is that we all are the same culture. Like we're all of, various backgrounds with under the umbrella of Hispanic or Latin, and we can still all look differently. Would you say, I'm going to go a little deeper, but would you say that you've had privilege as a result of being sort of ambiguous and possibly presenting as Italian?
Yeah, I definitely do recognize that there probably has been some privilege in that aspect, because I know, like you said, there's a very spectrum of Latin, and I've had say friends or acquaintances where I've either seen or heard encounters and things that they've had because of that colorism, which is very obvious. Whereas because of the ambiguity with me, a lot of the times, again, if they're just that ambiguity, they're leaned towards, oh, she's probably European or something to that degree. And it does seem to be kind of more accepted most of the time. It's almost the other way around, where the very obvious Spanish people also perceive me then as being like white. And I've had times where people know my ethnicity is Puerto Rican, and they will even introduce me as like, oh, she's Puerto Rican, but she's basically Italian. And they'll basically, I don't know what verb you want to use for that, but because of the opposite end of that.
I know it well. That is called a microaggression. I know it very well. I've had that similarly, right? Because we don't speak a certain way or sound a certain way that they think we should sound. And I think also then it's the opposite of what Carlos is saying of, an accent. It kind of defines like, okay, clearly he is from somewhere, right? But then if you don't have an accent and you don't look like the stereotypical that I've seen in movies, or, then you are not really that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, which is hurtful, quite frankly. It can be. I know for myself, it definitely was hurtful. And I didn't really fit in a bucket, because I was kind of like, yeah, like my Black and brown friends were saying one thing to me, but I felt like I was too ethnic for my white friends. And so kind of in the middle there, you feel like you're trying to fit in. So I think that, we hear this theme over and over again of, people of color on this talk. So that's a really good point. So thank you for sharing that. So I just want to remind folks, if you can drop in, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A, and then Steve will come shortly to help moderate those questions. So just make sure that you're dropping them in the specific Q&A chat. We would love to, be able to ask anything, hopefully. You don't have to answer things that you don't feel comfortable with. So moving forward, I would say, one thing that I have in mind is, where do we see ourselves, right? Because I think, the Spanish speaking population in the United States, we have now even bilingual chapters that we are starting. We're starting one in Boston. I just got the first couple of people on yesterday, right? We sat down, we had a lunch. They're very excited. And I know even in the communities, right? The more smaller communities of Latin business owners, I know certainly in Boston, it's kind of small. It's kind of big and kind of small. And I feel like it's like that in pockets of the United States, whereas there's people that are in their specific groups and demographics, and they stay together, but everyone knows each other. There's like an inner circle and then people trying to get in. So do you see potentially, how do you see the growth? How do you see things evolving? I know what we all hope for, but do you see things, radically changing in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, and how do you see it? So I'm going to ask Carlos first that question, like, what do you see for the future for, Latin professionals, Latin entrepreneurs throughout the country? And then, that's the first question I'll ask. So I'll ask you that, Carlos.
The future is great. We are about 62.1 million Hispanics or Latinos, whenever you want it, in this country. So there is a big snowball that nobody can stop it anymore. That's one of the biggest fears for some of the politicians as well, because we are a great consumer power. We consume trillions of dollars in this country per year. So, and we're growing. So if somebody have a business and you are not including the Hispanic or Latin community, you are losing business, because we have major purchase power. The problem with people is knowledge. They don't understand exactly who we are. We are so many different countries, so many cultures, so many colors, different backgrounds, and that's the problem that most people have. Unfortunately, the media, like Univision, perpetrates us like all are Mexicans, and they target certain communities, which make things like we are the type of people that we just jumping around and dancing and eating tortillas, and that's not what we are. They are amazing professionals right now that are CEOs, bigger companies in this country. And but one of the greatest things about only being Hispanic or Latino is we are immigrants. And we have that kind of drive to become better. So whenever we coming here, we are keeping our shoulders. We left a lot of things behind, especially for the first generation. And for the second generation as well, we pass that to our kids, that working hard and making the most of every opportunity. We still see the American dream. Some people think it's not American dream. It is American dream, and it's beautiful and it's there. Just you need to grab it. So for us, we all that type of population is a lot of opportunities. I can see that because when I come here many years ago, it wasn't too many of us, and it was difficult trying to go into certain. It was difficult if you want to work in a bank. You don't see any Latino or Latina in a bank. Now you see them everywhere, and in public offices. Immigration offices, it used to be all white people. Now you go over there and you see people from different backgrounds. And what excites me the most is not only when I told Latino and immigrant, it's not only us, it's a lot of immigrants as well that is into the umbrella. So to answer that question, yeah, I think the future is bright. I think people who don't understanding this power, the culture, who we are, and especially companies, they're gonna start getting behind because we are good and we know what we're doing. So I think, yeah, we have a great future, especially for the new generation. Was a long answer? Or?
No, that was fantastic. No, I mean, that was perfect. That's a really good perspective. Saying, having that optimistic, positive attitude, which is, you really do embrace. Yeah, I mean, that makes a huge difference for sure. Crystal.
Yeah, so I would say that I definitely think that things are improving, and you do see a lot more Latin businesses, Latin business owners, although they are, and this is from my very limited knowledge, I know when to admit that, they are very concentrated still, right? Like you brought up Camden. So in this area, for example, South Jersey, the Latin businesses are very concentrated in specific areas. So they're slowly getting out of that and growing into the other areas, becoming bigger entities, things like that. So it's definitely happening. It's happening. And I think along the lines of what Carlos mentioned, so knowledge, right? The more knowledge that we can help our communities to get, the easier they can expand. And then so willpower is there. In the Latin cultures, they're very united. The willpower, the hard work, all of that is 100% there. More knowledge is what's going to help us to expand and grow and continue to reach beyond where we are now. And then just the courage to do so, right? So having people like Carlos who don't let anything hold them back, accent, it doesn't matter. That's a role model for the community to see that you can do this, we can do this in this country, and it doesn't matter where you live now, you can be anywhere, your business can be anywhere. So it's happening.
Absolutely. That is perfect. And what I'm hearing both in both of what you're sharing, besides having that optimism and that resilience, which I think is like innate in all of us, but also like being able to help each other, like have a handout to make sure that we can help someone else up behind us. I think collaboration is the biggest potential opportunity that we have to help each other. More people come to the table. And I think that if we have a seat at the table, that we bring others. And a lot of times, not a lot of times, but at times we do see some folks not doing that, right? Like, well, I made it, you gotta work for yours too. And I think kind of giving them the tools and the knowledge, right? Because there's blind spots, there's things that we don't know just because it wasn't taught to us. So I think that kind of letting others in and giving them that access to those opportunities, I think is really important. So I think that's kind of what I got from both of what you're saying, if you agree with that. So that's pretty much it. My lovely assistant, Steve, if you would join us back again and help me with some of these questions here, that would be fantastic. There he is.
Hello, here I am. All right, so our friend Tina asks, what is one thing you would suggest chapters do to become more diverse?
Okay, yeah, so do either of you have anything specifically to say about this?
For who? For me? Or, I mean,
for either of you. If either of you has a question, I could always answer that question.
Yeah, listen, bring more visitors to your chapter. That's it. You just go one-on-one, talk to, bring some visitors, spend the wins. There is too many opportunities. So yeah, just bring more people and be a coach of that people who wants to be part of the system. If they're feeling comfortable, you helping them, because life is a circle. If you give, you get back. So help people to bring in those chapters, and that's it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely good. Crystal?
For me, I would say, kind of going back to that, you do see a lot of, if you're talking diversity, any diverse group concentrated in certain areas, or there are a lot of organizations that are specific for different types of minority groups. So just connect with one of them, introduce yourself to somebody, because they're going to know so many more people in their network that also fall into those diverse groups. So just that one connection, and just be open and honest. And like Carlos said, invite them to your chapter. But yeah, you're going to have to maybe go out of your comfort zone, but you're going to have to reach out and find where are the localized areas, where you can find more of the diverse groups, or just actually look up professional groups that are for diverse people.
Yes. And the other thing is, right, because we are diversity, equity, and inclusion, the diverse thing, I think that was a very like 2000s, 90s type of thing, right? Like just having in, like, let's get people that look a certain way that's not like us. So now we're good. But having them feel a sense of belonging, right? Not alienating them or isolating them, and having them, have them come in, have those conversations, get connected with other folks, and even, maybe invite them to go golf or chat. Another great tip that we got from Michael, who he's an executive director in Manhattan, and he always says this, is even though you don't have to say, and he's also on our panel, you don't have to, even only go to those groups, but even if you do have someone of a diverse background in your chapter, you can just ask and say, hey, do you have a good plumber, right? If you're looking for a plumber, maybe asking them, because very likely they have someone in their community that they can bring as a result, right? That might be a similar background. So I think that there's more like really engaging people more to try to tap into the networks. It's smart, of course, business-wise, but of course, just being able to connect with new people is always far more exciting. So yeah, so next question.
All right, this comes from Louis Sokol. Louis, and I go way back. He is the executive director in Washington, D.C., which is a very diverse culture. And he says the more diverse the members are, the more entry into the community and more referral pathways that can be developed. But then he asked this question, if you have a Spanish-speaking chapter or any other language that's not English in the United States, will that self-limit the potential referral passing that can happen in that chapter because of less diversity?
If either of you have something to say about this as well, you feel free. What I'll speak to that is, again, so Massachusetts, if people aren't aware, has the highest population of Portuguese speaking people in the country, other than Portugal and Brazil and Cape Verde, right? So I think we have all of those here, all of those communities here. And so I think it is because there's like cultural diffusion, right, in a community, and you see that a lot in Chinatown, where people still feel comfortable with the culture, still speak in the language. And I think so a lot of the chapters, I want to be clear, they're bilingual. So if someone feels more comfortable speaking in their native language, they get to speak that language first, their first language. They get to speak that for their weekly presentation or their feature presentation if they choose to. I don't think it is so that it's not that they're isolating people that do not speak the language. It's just that if someone feels comfortable, they can. If someone speaks not a word of Spanish but wants to be part of the group, they are absolutely welcome to be a part of the chapter. Because we also have other communities. We have women's groups forming. We have LGBTQ groups across the country, but anyone is welcome. But it's really more, I believe, to create the space to know that it is safe and welcome for those individuals. So that's what I see our vision is for these groups. So if anyone has anything to add, you're more than welcome.
I will say, I think, it's very important to diversify other people and just meet with different cultures. I love the idea to be around other cultures. I think that's the most amazing thing that we have in this country, being with other people with different beliefs, religions, and all those kind of things. So for me, that's great. But at the same sense, there are definitely some people that feel comfortable in their own way. I have customers that they prefer to speak on the language when they want to do a mortgage because they are more fluent in that concept. The ideas can go quicker. There are some groups or like Hispanic people and they like to be in their own. And that has to be something related to the culture. We have a very culture, very active talking, very happy. And when we start talking and making jokes and dancing, may feel other people uncomfortable. So sometimes they want to have a specific chapter or a specific group where they can put their music or make jokes or laughing and feel themselves. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a great thing, but at the same time, not trying to take other people away. So I see a lot of people coming to these groups, especially Hispanic groups. So just open their doors to them and teach them their culture and embrace them, which is what I see all the time. We are people who really love other people and open their arms to or new people coming to this kind of networking.
Very interesting. Yes. No, I agree with that for sure. That it is always better to be able to go outside of your comfort zone and to different markets and different communities. Absolutely. Yes. Crystal, did you have anything to add?
No, I think I agree with like what you were saying, Claudia. They are bilingual groups at minimum, if not more, right? And so it's just allowing that other piece where you can come here and you can speak your native language if you prefer to do so. But just like, the existing chapters before these new chapters were forming, the individuals within them, whether they're bilingual or not, they know people, they're business people. So they know individuals at all different industries, all other cultures as well. So I think I wouldn't expect it to be any different than the, groups that were existing previously.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, Steve and I have been launching chapters for a really long time. And for years, people, because Carlos, I mean, you're kind of like a machine. You're sort of, you're awesome, right? And you don't have nothing it doesn't faze you. To be in a group with other people, but I like that we have this option. So my stepmother is from Mexico and she mostly speaks Spanish. So, you know, and she's been here for 2 decades, right? And she would just feel more comfortable. She is in an environment where she's working with other people who speak different languages, but at the end of the day, she feels more comfortable, right? And I don't fault her for that. That's just how it is. And I think, but people still need to get business done. And they may just be terrified. Even now, I'm like terrified to speak my Spanish again. My grandmother is probably rolling in her grave, but yeah, like it's very Spanglish these days. But so sometimes you might not feel as comfortable when you do it. And I think if they do, but there's still a need for them to want to get connected. And some people, like we said, if they're bilingual, some people might be connected to others outside of that chapter that we can sort of, you know, get them in the door. So I like that. I like the idea of having this as a space for them to connect, because some people, quite frankly, are just terrified. We've had members over the years leave because they felt themselves, no one said, we can't understand you, you should leave. It's just they themselves felt uncomfortable as a result. And so therefore they kind of opted out. So I think that's why I think there's a space for all of it. That's why we have chapters with all the languages, and we're gonna keep going. So yeah. Steve, there's anything else?
There's a note here in the comments section that says, this is Matthew, who was talking about noticing that, you know, hesitations on updating terms for use of ancestries, ethnicities, and colors makes me wonder if he'll ever get it right. So terms like Hispanic, Latino, and people of color are so general to me that it almost makes it useless. But at the same time, he wants to know how he can make a better effort to engage people on their diverse backgrounds without being nosy or insulting.
Okay, very good question. Very, very good question. I think, again, did you have something, Crystal? I got
You go first.
Okay. Such a good question. And we get this kind of it, right? We get a version of this question, Steve, like monthly. I'm too scared. I don't want to offend anybody. I think in a great place, because if you think about it, right? I don't address people as, hi, Steve, hi, white person, right? Like I don't say that, so I don't have to worry about all the terms. I mean, he doesn't mind, but he doesn't mind. But I, you know, I find that you don't have to get it all figured out. I would avoid, again, trying to jump to stereotypes. If you ask someone where they're from, if Carlos says Medford, then that's it. He's from Medford, Massachusetts, and that's it. You know, he'll probably say that he's from Columbia, but I know some people too, they're like, no, I'm from here. And then people say, well, what do you mean? No, but really, where are you from? I think don't push the issue. Sometimes if people open the door to something, you're more than welcome to ask. But now that you are getting educated on certain things, you can say, oh, I was at this talk and I heard about this. You can ask them. But like we said, even with you know, Latinx or Hispanic or Latin, whatever, we don't seem to mind, but somebody might. And so I think sometimes people will tell you and educate you, and just not assume that everybody is a monolith, that everyone has the same thinking, the same mindset. That's just a start. But I would say don't stress about it too much. You know, if you have basic general questions about their ethnicity or food or something, I mean, I don't know. Some people are embrace it and are happy that you're asking, and then some don't. So I wouldn't take it personal. It just, everybody is different. Don't just make assumptions because one friend here is fine with you saying certain things that another person gets offended about it. Everybody is different. So I don't know if there's like a right answer in that, but that's kind of like overall what my thoughts are on it. So Crystal, you can add.
Yeah, I would say along those lines, yeah, not assuming that you know. I mean, as we've learned through the years, right? You really can't assume almost anything anymore about anyone. I know for me personally, a question that I think is appropriate, but again, you just don't know all the time, but just something like, what's your background or what's your cultural background? So you're not pre-identifying it for them. You're giving them the opportunity to tell you, and then they can give you, you know, whatever they choose as far as what they want to identify with. And I feel like it's a neutral enough question that you're not, you know, creating any type of stereotypes or anything like that. So I think for me, that I would consider that a safe question. I don't know if anyone else here would agree, but yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, because then that speaks to the culture,
Yeah.
more as opposed to,
Yeah.
you know,
Because a lot
other-
of the time that's what when people say, and I'm the same way. I love cultures and I want to know too because of my curiosity to embrace it, right? So I'm the same way, and I want to know. And yeah, if you ask me like, where are you from? And for me, being a military brat, that question is a very loaded question. Like, where was I born? Where did I live last? Where did I go to high school? Like, you just don't know. So that question can go anywhere. So if you're really interested specifically in like, what is that person's maybe ethnic background, then you can just specify like, what is your background or what is your cultural background to give them the opportunity to answer.
Yeah. Carlos, anything to add?
I mean, Claudia and Crystal, yeah, you guys are right. You don't have to stress too much about how you should call people in some way. You just have a conversation and ask us where you're coming from and learn a little bit more. And it's not the people's fault because unfortunately you have been learning all these things from the media. It's like trying to learn about what is America and I listen to the Fox News or CNN News. You're gonna have different concepts. So and the same with people. As I said before, Univision and other programs, the stereotypes are in different way. And just know that we are a huge population. We have different countries, different backgrounds. So better than make a joke and assuming something that you hear, just talking and trying to understand conversation. I always happy when people approach me and talk, where you coming from, what do you do, and all those kind of things. So I like to educate people, share knowledge. So yeah, as you said before, Clara, don't say much about that. Just talk to people before you're making any jokes and learn. So that's it.
Watch the jokes. And I do like what you mentioned before about Telemundo and Univision, when they have, you know, it's very like spicy and raunchy and very like over the top a lot of the times. And people assume that that's, oh, you're from Panama. That must be like, you must be making, you know, tortillas or like you said. And that's Mexican is just one culture. Like the three of us represent 3 different countries. So it's like, yeah, but everyone just makes this, depending where you're at. What I grew up in New York, so everyone assumes Puerto Rican or Dominican. Like there's only 2 in their world. There was only 2 growing up. I'm like, Panama, there's more. So, so we're just wrapping up. I want to say thank you so much for being on this panel. This was an awesome conversation. And again, this is being recorded, so folks can use this. If you're watching this now, make sure that you give yourself 1 CEU. As always, thank you, Steve, to help moderate this as well. And next month, we are going to talk about diversity and faith and different holidays. As the holidays are approaching, we're going to take off in December, but as the holidays are approaching, a lot of times chapters have different ways to celebrate, right? Most of them have a holiday party, but we're hearing different things in different chapters of, you know, is it truly inclusive in the chapter if the majority of the chapter is a particular religion or celebrates certain things in some ways? And so we're going to have a small panel next month to talk about that. And yeah, so make sure that you join us the second Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Eastern, and that will be on your event calendars. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Crystal, for your time. And make sure you follow folks. Where can they find you on social media? Do you have Instagram?
Yeah, well, I guess for me, the best bet is to follow my company. So we're on Facebook and Instagram under Illuminous Management.
Nice. All right. And Carlos?
For me, just LinkedIn, so you can just type my name, Carlos Mario Moreno, and you will find my name. So that's the site that I use the most.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you both so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Very much, Carl. Nice to meet you, Krista.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.